Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and The Thing. This is 2021, issue number 1 of 6. This was actually pretty good. I enjoyed this. It's part of the next big thing, a new story from a classic era. It actually starts out by saying 10 years or years ago in Brooklyn. So this isn't a modern day story, it's a little bit older. So you don't know exactly when or what's up, but nonetheless, for right now, I'm actually really enjoying this, and I'm looking forward to issue number 2. Let's talk about who made this comic book. We'll talk a little bit more about it. The writer is Walter Mosley. The artist is Tom Riley. Jordi Belair does the colors, and the letters are by VC's Joe Sabino. Cover art by Tom Riley also. A couple of variant covers out there, not too many, so I like that. Somebody named Superlog. Every so often I have a super log, but it's usually when I eat a lot of cheese. Anyway, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, of course, created the Thing and the Fantastic Four and the frickin' Marvel Universe, for crying out loud. Steve Ditko might have been involved in there someplace, somewhere, but you get the general idea. So this really reminds me of the Thing from back in the day. And you know that's the case when you're just like, yeah, some of the things that the Thing would say back in the day wouldn't fly today in the cancel culture world that we currently live in, right? So they try to update a couple of those things. Silly little things like, oh, I need a woman, I don't care what age, probably over 30. Okay, so if Agatha Harkness shows up, that's okay? You're going to go on a date with her? There's an evil portent over the Thing. We're not entirely sure why. Some super being that I've never seen before called Mott, M-O-T. Sounds like you got the Mott's. You remember those applesauce commercial, Motts? You got the Mott's. um, it's funny. This thing shows up, and it reminds me so much of what was the name of that freaking thing that turns out it was kind of a version of Harry from Spider-Man. Crap, Harry Osborn, whatever that thing was. Anyway, it just shows up and it's all like, hey, I'm super evil. Oh, you hit me. Ha, well, look, I'm stronger than you. I'm better than you. And I'll pull your heart out and show it to you and turn it black. And then, I'll do things to you. Everything seemed to work really well in this comic book. There are a couple parts that were a little bit weird, but beware. I'm going to talk a couple of spoilers here and there. Some dude is just kissing his girlfriend on the street, and Mott shows up and pretty much kills the guy, right? Throws him through a car window and jacks his ass up, and yeah. The guy pulled a knife on him, called him a pervert, but I mean, it's like, I don't think that's enough to kill the guy, so there must be something else there. There's this other guy also. We'll just call him Random Black Person, because really that's all he was. Later on, he calls himself Brusque, but like he's just some guy who I'm like, is this supposed to be freaking Luke Cage? Like, what's going on? Because it looks like him, you know. And I don't know the thing. Not that Mott goes and knocks on the door, and he's like, hey, what do you want? What the deuce do you want? As soon as he said, "What the deuce do you want?" or something to that effect, I'm like, "Deuce? What, is this Stewie from freaking Family Guy? What the deuce? Got my money? Pow! Where's my money? Pow! Oh my god." Anyway, so sometimes little word choices could be rethought. Maybe it's just me. Anyhow, and then he eventually goes after the Thing. Also, Thing meets Hercules in jail. It's a really weird thing. This was actually really believable and lovable to me. You know, here's the Thing who's got a bad temper, and he'll do some property damage, but everybody in the Marvel universe is insured, so it's not that big of a deal. But nonetheless, police show up and they're going to arrest him because he got into a bad mood because Alicia was out with some guy who's actually just a friend and clearly didn't mean anything negative by what was going on. So, you know, and she's going to take a break from him, which seems a little odd, but again, he's got an evil portent over him, so this fits. What was a little bit weird is that the guy was able to mace him and he just incapacitates the Thing immediately. Then somebody else shows up, the police, and they incapacitate him with freaking smoke gas or something, you know, the knockout gas. Probably specially made for superheroes because they also wound up catching Hercules. The mace is a little weird. Maybe they sell a mace. I'll tell you right now, I'm a pretty entrepreneurial guy. You know what I'm saying? If I was in the Marvel Universe and I'm big on self defense and stuff like that, I would probably make a super high powered mace that could potentially knock out a superhero, or at least I would try to. So, not too unbelievable, but it'd been cool if they would have said something like that, right? Anyway, he gets, it was a little weird, but he gets knocked out by, incapacitated by mace and then knocked out, whatever. So he goes to jail with a special vibranium, synthetic vibranium alloy thing, and I love that they're keeping to the Marvel universe, even though they're making up a couple of different things. Right, a synthetic vibranium alloy. You know what? It perfectly fits with the kind of thing that that would happen in the old school Marvel universe from back in the day when people actually cared about writing stories. Make no mistake, there were some silly things in here. But there were things that were a kind of silly that worked with the story and that worked with the main character, Ben Grimm. I was a little put off by the idea they said he was 6'6". I mean, I would figure Ben Grimm would be 6'6", but I always thought he was billed as 6 feet. So is this a recent change? Did they bill him as 6'6" some other time and I just missed it? Or is this the first time they're saying, oh yeah, he grew 6 inches. He grew a freaking half a foot all of a sudden. That's kind of weird to me. I remember when he was just billed as 6 foot, but whatever. He was never that, that tall. 6 feet is considered tall back in the day. And even today, it's like, oh, 6 foot, it's a good height. But nowadays with heroes being, 12'8", yeah, I don't know. I guess they felt the need to rise him up a half a foot anyway. Um, for the most part, everything that happened in this comic book, it felt like an old school comic book, right? There used to be a time when writers weren't doing this just to get themselves a little bit of extra credit, right? And I'm not saying all writers do that. Some writers actually care about the things that they do. Now, I know that Walter mostly has done other comic books before, but I just did a really quick search on Comixology, and maybe Comixology is down or something. They're not showing anything that he's done before, and I know that they used to put down the things that he's done. So I don't know, they're doing something, and I just don't feel like doing a bigger look. I even looked up Tom Riley, and it's like you're not giving me specifics on things that he's done before, right? He did a Marvel Snapshot. Cute. Which one? Right? Like, tell me what the frig, man. He did an Immortal Hulk. Okay, which one? Right? But anyway, um, I know that mostly he's done some stuff before, and he's a name that I don't trust implicitly, but when I see his name on something, I'm like, I want to check that out. I genuinely want to. And you read something like this, and anybody who's an old school, and realistically, if you like the thing, I'm going to say there's about 90 to 95% chance that you are, in fact, an old school comic book reader. So, minimum from the 80s, right? Because that was the last time that Ben Grimm was actually popular, but all things being what they are, this really did feel like that. He was moody, he was grumpy, he was very depressed. He could go, his emotions would sway from, I'm super happy, and oh no, the world doesn't exist in a vacuum. They're not all waiting for me when I come home. He decided he wanted some alone time, and the world moved on without him. Reed and the rest of the FF, Alicia, right? Everybody around him just kind of moved on and said, okay, well, I'm going to go do my thing, and you're doing your thing, so we're going to go do our thing too, right? The thing comes back and he expects them all to be, ready to, hey, like they're all dogs. Get a dog, they're all dogs with, ready to bring you your slippers and newspaper as soon as you come home and happy to see you. No, you needed your alone time. They needed theirs. This isn't that big of a deal. But he's going to go into a mood swing because that's who he is in his heart. And I love that. And anybody who likes old school thing, we've all of us loved that. This was a really well done comic book that felt like it was from back in the day, back when people actually cared about the characters, cared about the universe, right? The Marvel universe, cared about the stories that they were writing to bring to you. As far as the art's concerned, I did mention Tom Riley has done several things before. He is a pretty trusted artist. This isn't going to be some great, fantastic thing. But it's not one of those things where a major player like Jordi Belair on colors did not have to save this comic book. In fact, I felt like Jordi looked at the art in the comic book and said, this is very subdued, so I'm going to follow suit, right? The lines aren't all like when I look at some of the art, the lines are colored to the end, but it's not one of those things where he's necessarily filling in anything, right? He's not trying to add to it per se, even though that's exactly what coloring is. The lines are filled into the edges, but there are times I felt like they didn't even necessarily need to. And maybe I can find an image, maybe. If you see it right now, then I was able to find an image briefly, because I'm not going to go in depth. But sometimes where they have like, an interesting picture where the colors don't quite go to the edges, I felt like this color style could have been that for the most part, or at least for half of the book, and I would have been okay with it, right? The art was the pencils and inks were very subdued on this. Good inks, mind you, really good inks, but the pencils they had to have been purposefully subdued because it's just very boom, right? You'll see action, there's great action, so you know that this guy knows what he's doing. Riley knows what he's doing, but he was holding back because he didn't want the art it wasn't a powerful story. So he made the art match. Was that intentional or not? I don't know. But I know from what I'm looking at this, that's what it felt like. It felt like, Riley knows he read this story. He's like, this is how the story is going. This is the feel I get from the story. This is the art that I need to deliver. Whether it was picked that way by an editor or somebody, higher up, or he just chose to put that art style forth. I thought it was a great selection of style as far as pencils were concerned. Really good idea. Yes, of course, I've seen better art, but it clearly was not the intent here. The art matched the story. So I really dug that. There was just so much about this that I really enjoyed. This was a fantastic story, and even if I don't review the other issues, I am going to be reading these other issues because this was a really fun story. In the very beginning, it's a fun story that really got me interested in what's to come, things to come. Talk to you guys later. Like the video, watch an ad. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.